You are listening to Woodland Walks, a podcast for the Woodland Trust, presented by Adam Shaw. We protect and plant trees for people to enjoy, to fight climate change and to help wildlife thrive.
Hello! I've got to start by telling you this. I have driven to Langley Vale today, and I've been driving through suburban London, really not very much aware of my surroundings. And you come up this hill and suddenly everything falls away and you burst out onto the top of the hill, and it's all sky and Epsom Downs, and the racecourse is just ahead of you, and it dramatically changes. So it's quite an entrance into the Langley Vale forest area, and I've come to meet a couple of people here. So I've drawn up next to a farm. I don't really know where they are, but it gives me a moment to tell you a little bit about the Langley Vale project, which is amazing. It's a lovely thought behind it, because it is about honouring those who died in the First World War. And of course, there are many ways in which we honour and remember the people whose lives were changed forever during that global conflict. There are war memorials, headstones, poetry and paintings, and those man-made accolades, they capture all the names, the dates, the emotions and the places, and of course they're vital in recording and recounting the difficult and very harrowing experiences from that conflict. But what this venture, I think, wanted to achieve with its First World War Centenary Woods project was a natural living legacy for the fallen, flourishing places that symbolise peace and hope, as well as remembering and marking the dreadful events of war, but doing that in the shape of nature and hope for the future, both now and, for many, many generations to come, providing havens for wildlife and for people. And I'm one of those people. And so it's a great project. It's in its very early stages, but it's a great opportunity, I think, to have a look at around today. So, there's two people wandering down the road. They're in shorts. I think they're hikers. I don't think they're who I'm seeing. So, Guy, you're the site manager here. Just tell me a little bit about the site.
So we are on the North Downs here in Surrey. It's a huge ridge of chalk that runs along southern England and down through Kent, pops under the Channel and pops up again in France. And this chalk ridge has got very special habitats on it in terms of woodland and chalk grassland, and we're very thrilled here that we've been able to buy in 2014 a formerly intensively managed arable farm that was actually not very productive. The soils are very thin here on the hills, they're chalked with flints, so pretty poor for growing crops. And we're very lucky to buy it as part of our First World War Centenary Woods project as England's Centenary Wood in 2014.
And so tell me a bit about the Centenary Woods part of this.
So the idea of the project was to put a new woodland in each country of the United Kingdom, that being Northern Ireland, Wales, Scotland and England. And this is the England site. It's the largest of the four sites. We've actually planted 170,000 trees here. We did go through a full environmental impact assessment, and this enabled us to find out where we could plant trees, because there are some special habitats here and there is a national character to the North Downs. National character being that much of the woodland is planted on the high ground and much of the lower land is actually open space, be that arable use or pasture.
This is a centenary wood, so is this just an ordinary woodland planted in the name of those who died during the First World War?
Yeah, so the difference is one of the reasons this site was selected was because we do actually have history here from the First World War. We've got a number of memorials that I hope to show you today, one of which commemorates a day in the morning of January 1915. Lord Kitchener inspected 20,000 troops here that had gathered and had recently taken up the call to join his new army. So there were many sort of civilians here in civilian clothing. They got up at 4 in the morning, I'm told, to all assemble here for him arriving at 10 with his equivalent French minister. And they inspected the troops for a very short period of time because they had other troops to go and inspect nearby. But many of those 20,000 actually then ended up going obviously over to the front line, and many were not to return.
Okay, well, shall we have a walk down? And what is there then to commemorate that? Are these just trees planted in memory of that occasion, or have you got sort of a statue or something?
Yeah, well, the Regiment of Trees, as we're just about to see as you go around the corner, we commissioned an artist called Patrick Walls, who have actually created some statues for us replicating that event. So we have men standing to attention, carved out of sandstone.
Okay, so we're just turning around the corner here, and you can see this, yes, individual soldiers standing proud of a field of actually white daisies, and just emerging from that are these sandstone, you say?
Yeah, made from sandstone.
Sandstone soldiers. We're just walking up to them now, but behind that is, well, I mean, I'm assuming this is a statue, but a statue made of trees.
Indeed. What you're looking at there, Adam, is a memorial that we've called Witness. It's actually created by an artist called John Merrill, and it is made up of parts of oak trees that have been assembled, and it's inspired by the World War I painter Paul Nash, who is a cubist artist.
Yes.
And a particular painting of his called Trees on the Downs, and that's inspired by that. And we're very lucky to have included within the memorial part of an oak out of Wilfred Owen's garden.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's constructed to look like trees that have been obliterated effectively on the front line.
Yes.
Very
evocative. Because you get those very evocative pictures of a single tree, either scarred black or sometimes actually still alive in a field of chaos.
That's right.
Yes.
And that's kind of trying to illustrate that in our memorial here. And what you can do, the public can actually walk through it. We've got a couple of benches within it actually where people can sit and contemplate. And actually written on the inside of some of these beams that go up are actually excerpts from poems from First World War poets.
Oh, well, we'll have to have a look at this. So this first statue we're actually standing by, it sort of transforms in the flow of the statue. So it comes out of the ground as a sort of bit of textured rock, and as you go up the sort of what must be a 5 foot, 6 foot statue, it sort of transforms into a man. But this man is wearing suit and flat cap, so a civilian.
Indeed, and that's kind of trying to illustrate the fact that many of them had just joined up, and a number of them hadn't even got their uniform yet.
Well, let's move on, because there's ahead of us. Well, there's a sort of city gent on the left. It looks a bit grander, but on the right, there are obviously these look like officers.
Yeah, well, how I can best describe this is that we've actually got 12 statues here, and they're actually sit amongst standard trees that we've planted. So we've got birch here, we've got beech, we've got white beam, and we've got maple. But these statues, the 12 of them, are in 4 lines. Right. The guys at the back have only just joined up, and they haven't had their uniform yet. And what the artist wanted to illustrate was the fact that all classes joined up at the same time. So we have our working class guy with his flat cap down the end there. We have our middle class guy here with his hat on, and then we have the upper classes as well. And it's meant to illustrate that everybody was in it together and joined in.
And actually, I thought this was an officer. I can see from his insignia, he's a corporal.
Indeed.
He's a corporal.
And if you look at the statues, Adam, as we go nearer the front to where Kitchener would have inspected, they all put the guys at the front who had all their webbing, all their uniform already. And as we moved back through the lines, it was less and less uniform and equipment.
It's very evocative. I have to say, it's much more emotional than I thought it would be. It's amazing. Shall we go over to the sculpture? So this is called Witness.
So this is Witness, yes, and this is John Merrill created this. He's got a yard in Wales where he works wood of this size.
Wow.
As you can see, it's quite a structure.
So yes, you say the size, so I'm very bad at judging. So 6'12", I'm trying to say, how many 6 foot men could you fit under here? 6'12", I don't know, 30 foot high? Was that fair?
Yeah, I tend to work in metres. I don't know about you.
Go on then. Yeah.
But I'm going to say about 6 metres.
6 metres high.
At its highest point.
So it's made a sort of, coming into it, it's quite cathedral-like. In fact, it's small, but is that a fair description?
Yeah, I think so.
And as you say, every second tree here has a line of First World War poetry etched into it rather beautifully. Do you want to read just a couple of those out for us?
Yeah, so here we have one saying, "And lying in sheer, I look round at the corpses of the larchers whom they slew to make pit props. At evening the autumn woodlands ring with deadly weapons over the golden plains and lakes."
Amazing, it's an amazing place. And a couple of benches here, and these are
the names of the poets. So we have W. Owen here, we have E. Thomas, J.W. Streets, M.P. Cole, amongst others.
Yeah, very moving. Okay, well, it's a big site, isn't it? It's a big site. So where are we going to go to next?
Well, we can walk through now and we can see a new community orchard that we planted in 2017.
So we've come into, well, a big part. There's a huge number of trees planted here. So is this the main planting area?
Yeah, this is the main planting area. There's approximately 40,000 trees in here.
We're quite near a lot of urban areas, but here they've all disappeared, and the field goes down and dips up. Is that still Woodland Trust forest?
That's right, yeah. What you can see ahead of us there is actually the first planting that we did on site in 2014 on that hillside beyond.
2014. So eight, thank you. So my mental maths took me a moment. So the reason I was doing that because they look like proper trees and they're only 8 years old.
And it just shows you that obviously we think that when we're planting all these trees now that none of us will perhaps be here enough to enjoy them when they're mature trees. But I think you can see from just by looking over there that woodland is 8 years old and it's very much starting to look like a woodland.
Very much so. Well, brilliant. Well, very aptly I can starting to see poppies emerging from the fields amongst the trees. They do have this sort of sense of gravestones in a way, don't they? They're sort of standing there in regimented rows amongst the poppy fields.
Indeed.
So where to now?
So we'll go to Jutland Wood, which is our memorial to the Battle of Jutland.
The famous sea battle, wasn't it?
Indeed, yeah, it was the largest battle of the First World War and raged over 2 days, 31st of May to the 1st of June 2016. We're going to meet our lead volunteer, David Hatcher now, who's been working with us on the site for a number of years, and he's going to tell you about this memorial that we've got to the Battle of Jutland.
Right, and I mean here it's different because there are these rather nice, actually, sculpted wooden stands. What are these?
Yeah, these are actually commemorate. We've got what we call naval oaks. So we've got a standard oak planted for each of the ships that were lost in that particular battle. And we've also, between them, we've got these portholes that have been made by an artist called Andrew Lapthorne. And if I can describe those to you, they are sort of a nice piece monolith of wood with a porthole in the middle, a glass porthole that indicates how many lives were lost, and it has the name of the ship.
So this is HMS Sparrowhawk, where 6 lives were lost, 84 survivors, but HMS Fortune next door, 67 lives lost, only 10 survivors, and it just goes on all the way through.
Yeah,
HMS.
as you walk through the feature, Adam, the actual lives lost gets bigger and bigger, and by the end it's there were very few survivors on some of the ships that went down, and they're illustrated on these nice portholes that commemorate that.
And this is all from the Battle of Jutland?
Battle of Jutland, this is, yeah.
And just at the end here, HMS Queen Mary, 1,266 lives lost, only 20 survivors from 1913. Very, very difficult.
This memorial actually is by a lady called Christine Charlesworth. And what we have here is a metal representation of a sailor from 1916 in his uniform. And that faces the woodland here, where you can see ancient semi-natural woodland that would have been here in 1916. So this sailor is looking to the past and our ancient woodland. If we look to the other side of the sailor, we have a sailor from 2016 in his uniform, and he's looking in the opposite direction, and he's looking at our newly planted trees, looking to the future.
Let's walk through here, and this is at the end of this it's very elegantly done, but obviously very sombre. But at the end here we're going to meet David, who's your lead volunteer. So David, so you're the lead volunteer for this. I know that must be quite a responsibility, because this is quite a site.
That's very flattering. I'm a lead volunteer.
Right, okay.
I have lots of brilliant colleagues.
Really? So how many of there are you here who help?
7 lead volunteers,
right.
But there are about 100 volunteers on the list.
And what do you actually do here?
Well, it's a whole range of different things. As you know, this was an intensively farmed arable site, and there was lots of things like old fences and other debris. It was also used as a shooting estate, so there were things left over from feeding pheasants and what have you. Lot of rubbish which all had to be cleared, because it's open access land from the Woodland Trust, and we don't want dogs running into barbed wire fences and things like that.
And it's different from, well, I think almost any other woodland I've been to, in that it has this reflection of World War I in it. What does that mean to you?
Well, it actually means a lot to me personally, because I was the first chairman of the Veterans Gateway. So I had a connection with the military, and it was brilliant for me to be able to come and do something practical rather than just sitting at a desk.
Yes.
To honour our veterans.
And do you notice that people bring their families here who've had sort of grandfathers or great-grandfathers who died in World War I?
Yes, they do, and in particular we have a memorial trail in November every year, and there is a wreath where you can pick up a little tag and write a name on it and pin it to this wreath. Right. And that honours one of your relatives or a friend or somebody like that, and families come, and children love writing the names of their grandpa or whatever on and sticking it to the wreath.
And do you have a family connection here at all?
My father actually served at my grandfather actually served at the Battle of Jutland.
Wow. And what did he do there?
He was a chief petty officer on a battleship, and he survived, I'm happy to say, but perhaps I wouldn't have been here had he not.
Yeah.
And all of my family, or my father, my mother, both my grandfathers were all in the military.
Wow. And do you remember him talking to you about the Battle of Jutland? Did he ever talk about that?
He didn't, but what he did have was he had a ceremonial sword, which I loved. So I loved playing with this ceremonial sword.
Gosh, okay, you're still here to tell the tale.
And so are all my relatives.
Okay, well, yes, perhaps that's more to the point. We should, yes, please don't play with ceremonial swords out there. But that's amazing. A lot of people, of course, don't talk about those times.
No.
Partly because it's too traumatic.
Yes.
And, you know,
yes.
as we've seen, how many people died here.
Yes.
Look, it's a relatively new woodland,
Mm-hmm.
and we've just amongst here, in this bit which commemorates Jutland, the trees are really only some of them poking above their really protective tubes. But what sort of changes have you seen in the 7, 8 odd years or so since it's been planted?
It's changed enormously. It's quite extraordinary to see how some trees have really come on very well indeed. But also a lot of wildflowers have been sown, but we have to be very careful about which we sow and where, because it's also a very valuable natural wildflower site, so we don't want them getting mixed up.
Yes. So what's your favourite part of the site then?
Well, my favourite part, I'm an amateur naturalist, so the sort of dark and gloomy things that are very like ancient woodland.
Right.
We call them ancient semi-natural woodland. So there is a Greathurst Wood is one of the ancient woodlands.
Here on this site?
Yes, on this site, it's just over there.
Right.
But we have another couple of areas that are really ancient semi-natural woodland. But actually, I love it all.
Yes.
There's something for everybody.
Yeah.
There are the skylarks that we can hear at the moment, there are the arable fields with very rare plants in them, very rare fungi in the woods. Actually, that line of trees that you can see behind you is something called the sheep walk. And the sheep walk is so called because they used to drive sheep all the way from Kent to markets in the west of the county. And they've always had that shelter belt there. It's very narrow, but they've always had it there to protect the sheep from the sun or the weather or whatever. And it's the most natural bit of ancient woodland that there is, even though it's so narrow. And it's fascinating what you can find under there.
And I saw you brought some binoculars with you today.
Yes.
So, I mean, what about then sort of the birds and other animals that presumably have flourished since this was planted?
It's getting a lot better. The Woodland Trust has a general no chemicals and no fertiliser policy. And so as the soil returns to its natural state, then other things that were here before, sometimes resting in the soil, are beginning to come up. I think we surveyed maybe 20 species of butterflies in the first year. There are now over 32, and there are only 56 different species in the country. So we have a jolly good proportion. We have 2 red list birds at least here, skylarks and lapwings nesting. It's all getting better. It's getting a lot better under new management.
Fantastic. Well, it's real joy to be here today. So we're here in the Jutland woodland, bit of the woodland. Where are we? We're going to go next, do you think? Where's the best place?
I think we're going to go and have a look at one of the wonderful poppy fields.
Right.
Because the poppies come up just like as they did in Flanders every summer, and it really is a sight to behold.
And is this peak poppy season?
It's just past, so we hope they're still there and they haven't been blown away.
Okay. It would be typical if I get here. All the poppies have gone. All right. Well, let's go off there. So. Well, this is quite something. So we've turned into this other field, and it is a field. Well, never in my life have I seen so many poppies. Mainly red poppies, but then there are, what are these amongst them?
Yeah, so what you can see, a number of species of poppies here. The main one you can see is the red Flanders poppy.
And is this natural, or is this planted because of the First World War reference?
No, it's mostly, we did supplement this with some with actually planting some of these poppy seeds, but most of them are natural, and it's a direct result of the fact that we continue to cultivate the land. One of the most important conservation features we have here on site is rare arable plants. Bizarrely, these plants were once called arable weeds, But when intensification of farming began in
Yes.
mid-20th century, timing of ploughing was changed, the introduction of herbicides. All these things meant that these so-called arable weeds actually became quite rare, and they were just hanging on to the edges of fields. What we've been able to do here is to continue to cultivate the land sympathetically for these plants, and we now have much better arable plant assemblages here. We have rare arable plants here now that mean that some of these fields are of national importance and a couple of them of international importance.
Wow.
But a byproduct of the cultivating the land every year for these is that we get displays of poppies like this every year.
And when you cultivate, you talk about cultivating land, you're planting these poppies? Or what does
No,
that
it's
mean?
almost, it's like replicating the fact as if we're going to plant a crop. So we actually plough the field and then we roll it as if we're going to prepare a crop.
But you don't actually plant the crop.
No, exactly. And then we leave it fallow, and then naturally these arable plants tend to actually populate these fields. Poppies are incredibly nectar rich. They're actually quite short-lived. Some of you may know of poppies that grow in your garden, and they can be out in bloom in one day and completely blown off their petals the next day. They don't last very long, but they do pack a powerful punch for nectar. So definitely invertebrates, and because we don't use chemicals here anymore, which would have been used constantly on this farm, and what that means is that many of these arable plants, they require low fertility. Otherwise, they get out-competed by all the things you'd expect, like nettles and docks and thistles. Right. So as the land improves, so will hopefully our arable plant assemblages, making them even more impressive than they already are.
But actually, as the soil improves, isn't that a problem for things like poppies, because they'll get out-competed by other plants which thrive better?
No, it's a fair point, but it's actually crucial that to actually increase biodiversity in these fields, it actually requires low nutrients. In terms of a lot of these fields as well have, from years of sort of chemical application, we have a lot of potassium in them, they have a lot of magnesium in them, and they have a lot of phosphorus too. Now magnesium and potassium tend to leach out of the soil, so they will improve naturally. Phosphorus tends to bind with the soil and sticks around for a longer time. So we're trying to get these chemicals down to an acceptable level to make them more attractive for rare plants and therefore increasing biodiversity.
Well, it is like a painting, and I'm going to take a photo and put it on my Twitter feed. So if anyone wants to see that, head over there. But it's beautiful. It's properly beautiful. I mean, so we're walking by this extraordinary painting of a poppy field to our right. It's a site which has been revolutionised because it was all arable farming less than a decade ago. Mm-hmm. What has that done for biodiversity here?
Well, if you can imagine these fields, it's quite difficult to imagine them as we walk through them now, but these would have all been bare fields that were basically in crop production. And there's clearly been an explosion of invertebrate activity here. We've got increasing butterfly species every year. Our bird numbers are starting to go up. But also importantly, we've got certain areas where habitats are being allowed to develop. So we have a former arable field here that is now developed. We've planted up with hazel coppice in a system we call coppice with standards, where we plant with
coppice
with standards. Yeah,
well, very grand.
It is. It's an old forestry practice where they planted lots of hazel trees that would have been worked, and then periodically in amongst them there will be oak trees that will be allowed to grow longer and then harvested at a later date.
Right.
What this has meant is we've got now long grasses growing between these trees, and that's making it much more attractive for small mammals on site.
Right. Like what sort of small mammals you get?
It's things like voles, wood mice, field voles, these sort of things that make sort of tracks and sort of tunnels within the grass. Yeah. And what that has meant as we go up the food chain is that that's become more attractive now on the site for raptors. Right. Nice story from 2 years ago. We have a volunteer that works with us who's a BTO bird ringer.
Right.
And he sort of approached us and say, you've got barn owls nearby and your site's starting to develop nicely. How do you fancy putting up some raptor boxes to see if we can attract them in?
Wow.
So, which was great, and we managed, the local bird club donated some barn owl boxes.
Right.
We put the barn owl boxes up in this field I've just talked about, the Hazel Coppice field, and the expert says, well, they probably won't nest in it this year, they'll come and have a look.
Yeah.
Anyway, we put it up 2 months later, it was being used.
Wow.
And we were able to ring those 3 chicks that came from that thing, and they've been breeding ever since.
Wow, how amazing. It must be very heartening to be working on a site which is growing like that so quickly.
It is, it's amazing, and when you consider that we're within the M25, we're very close to London, but we've got this site that is growing, and it's only going to get better as we manage it sympathetically for the wildlife that it hosts.
Yeah. We're just coming around the bend and back to almost where we started, to the field of standing soldiers amongst the growing trees and the cathedral-like tree sculpture there, which will take us back to the beginning. So we've just done our little tour. I don't know, half an hour, 40 minutes or so. Presumably we've skirted the edges of this.
You certainly have, Adam. It's a fraction of the site. We are 640 acres in size, and we're just at the top part of it. This area that we've largely walked around today, very much focused on the World War I and our memorials, but much of the rest of the site is quite a bit quieter. There are fewer people around, and the focus is definitely more on wildlife.
Yes. Well, it's an amazing trip. I have to say, I've been to lots of different Woodland Trust woods all the way up the country, with vast stretches of Scotland. I have to say, I think this is my favourite. It's quite a sight. And the memorial's done really tastefully and fits in with the landscape. I think this is quite a sight for you to manage. It's quite a thing.
Yeah, it's incredible, and we're just so proud of it, and we just can't wait for to be able to open our car park and invite people from further afield, and not just locals who get to enjoy it, as is the case at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, thank you. It started this morning, bright sun. It looked like I shouldn't bring a coat. Then all of a sudden I thought, oh my goodness, we're standing under a completely black cloud, but it has not rained. It has not rained, and we're in running distance of the car. So
somebody's looking down on us, Adam, at least for a couple of hours.
They are indeed. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to the Woodland Trust Woodland Walks. Join us next month when Adam will be taking another walk in the company of Woodland Trust staff, partners and volunteers. And don't forget to subscribe to the series on iTunes or wherever you're listening to us, and do give us a review and a rating. And why not send us a recording of your favourite woodland walk to be included in a future podcast? Keep it to a maximum of 5 minutes, and please tell us what makes your woodland walk special. Or send us an email with details of your favourite walk and what makes it special to you. Send any audio files to podcast@woodlandtrust.org.uk, and we look forward to hearing from you.